What could you learn about retirement from a 34-year-old? Well, we're about to find out.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the Retirement Answer Man, Roger Whitney.
Back when I was a senior in high school, I could never have imagined learning something from somebody in elementary school. I mean, I got my driver's license, dude. Why would I listen to an elementary school kid? Much less a freshman in high school, right? When you're younger, looking at people a lot younger than you are and thinking that you're going to learn something from them seems really silly. But you know what? That's a dangerous belief to have when you get older. Because here I'm 50. And our guest today, Deacon Hayes, is 34 years old. So I don't know, I didn't do the math, but when I was a senior in high school, he might have been in elementary school. I never would have listened to him then. And even though I am, quote unquote, the retirement answer man, and I've been doing this for almost as long as he's been alive, there's a lot to learn from 20-something professionals and 30-something professionals like Deacon Hayes. So we're going to talk to Deacon and let him challenge some of our beliefs and hear how a 34-year-old is thinking about retirement and planning for retirement. And through that conversation, I think we're going to be able to challenge some of our own beliefs and maybe make some more informed decisions for ourselves. But we can't do any of that until we have that all-important disclaimer. It's time for that all-important disclaimer, and that is simple. Don't take advice from me. Hey, don't take advice from Deacon on this show. We're only here to provide helpful hints and education. I only give advice to clients that I work with as a fiduciary, and as far as I can tell, you are not one of them at the moment. So think of this as helpful hints and education before you make any actions. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor, because that's just common sense. Hey, in the news today, we just finished the results webinar for the 4th edition of Retirement Plan Live. This was our largest webinar yet. Hundreds of people were on the live event, which is crazy. To be honest with you, I'm very humbled that so many people are finding this of value. The webinar went great. No hitches whatsoever. Now, I say that with full disclosure that I'm actually recording this about a couple hours before the webinar, so I'm praying that as you listen to this, it actually had no hiccups and it went great. But we do actually have hundreds and hundreds registered for the webinar. Now, if you listen live, awesome. What I would love for you to do is send me some of your questions and comments from the show. If you didn't listen live, you should be able to find it in the Learning Center under webinars, the replay. Take a listen, take a watch. And if you have questions or comments, email them to me, because next week's edition of the show is going to be all about your questions and comments on Lori and Bruce's story and analysis. And then we're going to start gearing up listener questions again, because we've had those piling on while we've been doing this live case study. I'm amazed at the response that we're getting. So please send in your questions, because I have no doubt if you have a question or a concern or a comment, you're probably not the only one. So that's what's been hot in the topics today is the webinar, and so thankful it went without a hitch. Knock, knock. Now let's go talk to a youngin', a 34-year-old in Deacon Hayes. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk with Deacon Hayes. He is the owner of wellkeptwallet.com, Well Kept Wallet, and he just came out with a book called You Can Retire Early, Everything You Need to Achieve Financial Independence When You Want It. So we're going to talk about some of the wisdom that we can pull from his book and his journey. So let's have a conversation with Deacon. So Deacon, my first question is, how do you define retirement?
Retirement's basically being able to do what you want when you want. You know, most people before retirement kind of clock in, clock out, answer to a boss, have a certain amount of vacation, have a finite amount of resources that they need to continue to work to be able to provide for the lifestyle. And so retirement is basically having enough resources that you don't have to work if you don't want to. And so you have that time and freedom to do what you want when you want.
So it's not the traditional view of retirement that you're sitting on the beach doing nothing. I mean, I guess it could be that, but it's not really checking out. It's just living life on your own terms.
Yeah, exactly. And what I like to tell people is like, you're retiring towards something, not away from something. And so really saying, hey, what is that greater purpose? Like, what would I rather be doing with my time? For some people, they enjoy working, but they don't want to work as much. Maybe they want to work, a few hours a day and, then spend the rest of their day spending time with family. So it really is, it's less about kind of the doing nothing, and it's more about doing life with purpose and having the resources to do that.
Okay. So, and that's where we just sort of don't have a word for it, right? My generation, I'm almost a baby boomer, not quite. We think of retirement sort of like our parents or grandparents. You're really thinking of it in a different way.
Yeah, I think as kind of generations have gone on, the workplace has changed, right? I mean, people can work remotely. A lot more people can be their own boss with technology. And so really it is kind of finding like, what do you feel called to do in life? What brings you joy? What brings you purpose? Where do you feel like you best add value in the world? And so, the retirement is the part that says, hey, I'm just going to have enough resources so that I have that freedom. I have that time. So yeah, it's very different, I think, than the traditional way of thinking about retirement.
And so your book, and we are talking about your book in a roundabout way, but I think this is important because it's not about having enough money not to work. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's about having enough money and having a lifestyle where you don't have to work at that same pace of, corporate America, full-time work, feeling like your life is being sacrificed for some far off hope of slowing down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what I find is if people kind of retire towards something, meaning that kind of a new passion, a new direction, and it's invigorating, it gives them more purpose. A lot of times they make more money in those retirement years than they did when they were working a traditional 9-to-5 job, right? And so people don't have to do that. But I find that, I met this guy who was 76 years old, and I told him I was writing a book about early retirement. And he said, I tried that once. And I said, what happened? He said, well, I sat on the couch, I ate a bunch of junk food, and I had a heart attack within the first year, And so I said, what'd you do? He said, I went back to work, and it was like, it dawned on him, like his purpose wasn't to sit on the couch and do nothing. His purpose was he was really good with his hands. He was a general contractor and he enjoyed doing that, but he just changed the way that he did that, and got a lot of fulfillment out of it.
Yeah. And I definitely find in my practice that the clients that are the happiest in quote unquote retirement are doing exactly that. It's not really retirement. We call it pre-retirement around here. It's like the pre-traditional retirement of that in-between stage. So that's very wise. And now how old are you, Deacon?
34.
34. So, you're wise to see that and then start to write about, well, that makes you make different choices in how you structure your lifestyle, right? Because, traditional retirement planning is save this huge nest egg and then you'll be okay. But like you as a 34-year-old guy, well, that nest egg is almost impossible to save.
Yeah, and it just depends. So I look at it more from an income stream standpoint than a huge nest egg, because I think a lot of people get caught up with, oh my gosh, I need to have a couple $1 million in the bank to retire, versus saying, no, how can I get different income streams that are sustainable and, viable, that I don't necessarily have to work as much, And so there's so many ways to do that. And I talk about that in the book as far as real estate, the stock market, and creating some sort of business, And I think it is so amazing in 2017, and then coming in 2018, all of the things that people can do. I mean, you can make money walking dogs. There's an app, it's an Uber app for walking dogs. You can make money, literally just basically answering phone calls in your pajamas. I mean, there's just so many ways to where you can enjoy life and use your skill sets, but not have to feel burnt out by the traditional way of work.
Oh, I think you're dead on. I mean, if you Google retirement crisis, don't do it because we'll have to open up Chrome and our bandwidth will be shocked. But if you Google retirement crisis, it's like everywhere. But I think it really comes from thinking of the old model of building the nest egg as the only solution. And I think what you're proposing isn't just great for, guys your age and families your age, but for people that are 50 and older that for whatever reason don't have the nest egg. This is really the key to a lot of the solution for it, in my mind.
Oh, yeah. And I think the thing is when you're, in the 50, 60, year range, like you've built up a lot of knowledge and skill sets and things that are valuable to people, right? And a lot of that stuff you probably enjoy because, we all like talking about the stuff that we know, and being able to kind of help others, mentor others. And so the beauty is like, why don't you take that knowledge and that skill set and turn it into an income stream, whether it's through the internet, through finding some sort of resource. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to even work, right? It's like you create something and then, sell it and add value to the world.
And I think that's something that baby boomers in general don't get as much as a 30-something, right? Because the pace of technology and the idea of leasing out your expertise or your service, whether it's Uber or whatever, is something that was foreign to us when we were growing up. And that's one reason why I had you on the show, because you got some new ideas, because you're living in this world that a lot of us never lived in if we're over 50.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So when I went to FinCon, a conference in Dallas with Roger, there was the first guy that picked me up was actually in his 60s, and he worked as a missions director at a church, and he was doing Uber part-time, and I could tell that he loved it. Like, we were having a really in-depth conversation. So he's really good with people. He's got a car and he's got extra time, and it was like, so that was an aha moment of like, oh, that's something that, you could be doing easily. TaskRabbit is another one. Like, if you're a general contractor and you're like, hey, I like to do stuff with my hands. Like, there's a website called TaskRabbit where people have tasks that need to get done and need your skill set, and they'll hire you to do it. And you can do it on your own time and choose when to do it, or if not to do it. So it's incredible. Really, I know people can be kind of discouraged, but these processes are getting a lot simpler to do. And, the income is definitely there.
So I think, the first lesson from your book is it's not all about building a nest egg. I mean, you got to build assets and wealth by capturing free cash flow, but that's only part of the equation. The other part is building these multiple sources of income. And you go through, one thing I like about your book is that it goes through very clear explanations of what all these different types of things are. When you think about real estate, you have a great section that just talks about, here are the basics of real estate if you've never done it, so you can sort of learn some of the language. And the same thing with starting a business. So I think that's a great structure. So my question is, for you, what's your retirement plan?
So here's the funny thing. So I don't ever think I'll traditionally retire, right? I enjoy being productive and adding value and coming up with ideas. I think I'll just work less and smarter. And so for me, we're planning to be financially independent by 42. And so the idea is at that, we'll have that traditional retirement sense. We'll have enough resources and enough income that we won't have to work if we don't want to. But what I find is the more that I focus on what I'm actually passionate about and that I enjoy, the more money I tend to make. And being able to delegate. So, one of the chapters is talking about business and, how do you create a business where I can focus on what I'm really good at, and then I delegate to other people to do what I'm not as good at. That there's other people that are smarter than me that I found out. If I hire them and I pay them well to do those things, then I don't have to do them. And so really it's kind of more about focusing on, the business aspects that I'm passionate about, spending more time with my family. We love to travel. So we want to do international trips. My wife has this plan, our kids are 2 years apart. So when they're 6 and 8, we're going to take them on a safari to Africa. And when they're 10 and 12, we're going to take them to Australia, So really kind of say, hey, how are these things possible? Well, creating the income streams, building up the assets and being smart about it.
So here's a question from a 50-year-old who has had major hiccups in their life. There's this security wrapped in having consistent employment. So if you retire early and you have these different sources of income, let's call it freelance or part-time work and some real estate income, when life throws you a major curveball and your freelance dries up or you have a major health issue, that's part of the danger that people grapple with is, well, how do you plug the holes if you don't have that consistent work or career when you're just, putting all this together in a general contractor way? When those pieces fall down, you don't have any consistent income to really get you through those hard times.
So what I'd say is diversification, right? I mean, I don't think anybody should put all their eggs in one basket, right? So we talk about real estate, stock market, and business. Literally, I have, my foot in all three, if that's possible, because I only have 2 feet. But but the reality is real estate is part of our plan. And so having that, for us, it's crowdfunded real estate. So instead of actually having the physical property, we just pool our money and have a piece of that. So that's one income stream. So that doesn't really require work on my part. Then the stock market is another avenue. And obviously that's probably one you've talked about a lot. And that's going to be another thing where it doesn't really require work on my part. It's just de-investing consistently over time and getting the return. The business is the one that requires my work, but only if I want it to, right? So I could easily delegate tasks that I don't want to do and make less money. So even, at difficult times, we might have to scale back on growth and those type of things, but we'll still have some revenue coming in. But the thing is I did think about this the other day. I thought, what if the internet went down, right? Because everything that I do is on the internet. What would my life look like? I'd probably have to be some sort of handyman, going around fixing stuff. So, it really is like I've been blessed in the sense that I've had commission only jobs, for most of the years of my lives where it was like, if I didn't go out there and make sales, I didn't make money. So I didn't really have that security, for most of my life. I really had to make it myself. And so my wife is the opposite. She's very much the security person. She works for the government as a teacher and, love that steady paycheck and that kind of thing. So there are those differing personalities. Some people, it would be a difficult thing to go start a business and get the second stream of income if they've never done it before. So I really encourage people to kind of, just test it out. Don't make a leap from, okay, I'm a full-time corporate person to now I'm driving Uber on the weekends, kind of transition wisely.
And I think that's a great point of, one, you have always had this mentality of growing and being dependent upon your performance, which a lot of people don't. And I think the other point that you brought up that I think is really good is that, you test it. You don't get all gung ho and take this job and shove it and go try to recreate it, but baby step your way into it. Let's talk about the other side of the equation, because I think this is an important part of the equation, which is you can't build a lifestyle that needs a lot of cash flow consistently. You talk about the dangers of fixed debt and, house choices and things like that. Because if you build, I always call it building a cage of all this stuff that you have to support, that sort of traps you in a way, doesn't it? How do you make sure you don't build that cage?
So the best thing is to really be conscious of every decision that you make and how it impacts your plans, right? We went to go buy a house, and we could have easily bought like a 3,000 square foot house, but our monthly payment would have been twice as much as what our current monthly payment is, And so we thought, okay, well, we're going to have 2 kids. We need a 4-bedroom house. This house is sufficient at 1,500 square feet. And therefore, it's so funny. I have friends that 1,500 square feet, they think is small. And for me, I feel like, gosh, we've got more space than we need, And it is kind of a mentality thing of, okay, this decision, though, is going to make a huge impact on our future.
Yeah, and you're talking to a man that has a house twice your size, so I feel like, wow, that seems really tiny.
Yeah, right? It is. It's all, I went to Hong Kong with my wife after we got debt free, and they were telling us how the average family of 4 lived in like a 300 square foot apartment, And so it really is. It's all about perspective. And so, but think about the long-term impact of that decision. I financed a car once, and I realized really quickly, like, this is a bad move financially because it depreciated so fast. I owed more on it than it was worth. And I had to keep making this monthly payment. And so I couldn't put that money in the stock market. I couldn't, put that money to invest in a business or pay off other debt. I was putting it into a depreciating asset. And so really just thinking about, especially those big purchases, how those can impact your long-term financial goals.
Right. And I think there's 2 parts of that. And your book goes through in a very easy to understand way, the impact of those decisions. You talk about the house decision and credit card debt and fixed payments, fixed debt type of decisions. And I think a lot of people, when they hear this, if they aren't living that way or, in a more frugal way, they feel like it's judgmental a lot of times. And you disagree if you want. I think the point is, it's not judgmental. It's a matter of choices. And one, understanding the implications of choices so you can be more informed, right? And then secondly, just realize if you want the new car or the bigger house or whatever, that's a choice. And this is what you have to give up for that because there's no free lunch. So it's really more understanding, right?
Yeah. And I think, I never wanted to come across as judgmental, but I found that it's a choice that we make, that it's about opportunity costs, right? I have 2 choices. I could buy this house for, $200,000, or I could buy this house for $400,000. Long term, the $200,000 house is going to have far less interest, and it's going to be a lower cash payment than if I bought the $400,000 house, And so they're both going to have their own values and benefits. And, people have to personally weigh those out. But the reality is, as far as early retirement, it's going to probably make more sense to get, the house that's half the price, because you'll have more money to put towards, investing in other real estate, or, putting towards the stock market or starting a business. So yeah, it's definitely a personal decision, but definitely make sure that you're cognizant of that when you're making it and you're not emotional about it. You're really, sticking to the plan.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's, let's take the new car example. Okay. So a new car that's, roughly $50,000, you're going to finance it. You're going to pay $1,000 a month. Right. And a lot of it is psychological in it's pretty, it's fast, it has new features. So that's what's in front of you, from an emotional standpoint. And what is missing, and this is why you need a plan, and your book talks about how to create a plan or how to really dial in what your why is. If you don't have the why of why you're trying to lower your monthly obligations, then you have no counterbalance to the emotional attachment to the beauty of the car. You need to have that emotional why. Well, I can't do that because I so care about taking my kids to Australia when they're 10, right? That's the thing that if you don't have that, then it's easy not to just buy the car.
Yeah, that's a really good point, is discovering that why and just saying, hey, this is more important than this. Otherwise, you're right. You're just going to make that $50,000 car purchase, or that $400,000 house purchase when you're like, oh, why can't I put my kids through college? Well, because I bought too much house that I couldn't afford, or I bought cars that I didn't necessarily need, but I could have been putting away, $500 a month in my kids' college fund, that kind of thing, if I just got a car half the price, those type of things.
Yeah. And the world is conspiring against us in this effort. Because the world, literally is trying to decrease the friction of transactions. So we buy on emotions and at a quicker pace. So that's why you need to have an anchor, which is the why of what you're trying to do for your family. So that's great.
Yeah. And understanding the marketing components of, society, right? Like you said, they're trying to make it like, oh, you deserve this. You work hard for this, you make the money, right? You can make the payment, that kind of thing. And so it's so easy to get trapped in that mentality, but really that why will kind of help guard you against that.
Yeah, I really like your book. And when I was reading it, I'm like, well, this doesn't apply to baby boomers who listen to this show more. You're 34, you're talking about to your audience, right? People like you that are thinking differently about life. But then I said, no, that's not true, because what I like about your book is, one is it helps really explain clearly the trade-offs of the decisions we just talked about. And two, it gives some very clear explanations of what is crowd-funded real estate. Things that, most people aren't exposed to, especially if they're working in a normal financial world. So I think it's a great primer for explaining what some of these alternative things are that people can explore that they may not have been exposed to.
Well, thanks. And I also want to say, I'm not a licensed financial professional anymore, right? Really what I want to do is kind of give people different avenues to understand and know that these are things that you could do, but know that there's also kind of like, there's risk involved, right? As with anything. And so that was what I kind of want to do, is kind of say, hey, here's some possible avenues, and understand that, choose the ones that make sense to you. And even if it doesn't apply to, say, someone that's 50 or 60, think about your kids, right? Think about your grandkids and kind of the decisions they're making, are some of these things that these principles that you could pass down and maybe, be more knowledgeable about when you have those conversations with them.
So the book is You Can Retire Early. We'll have links to it in Six Shot Saturday in the show notes. Deacon, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on how to be a little happier. So last week was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and we talked about turning off the TV, turning off our phones, and actually being present with the people we love. Well, I achieved that. Didn't really watch any football, played some cornhole, played some Ticket to Ride, played sequence. We had lots of mom and dad against son and daughter sequence battles. Parents came out on top. Yeah. Create some videos for some special people that we wanted to be thankful for. So I'm happy that I achieved that. It's worth it. Turn things off and go be with people you love. Now let's go set a smart sprint for the next week.
On your marks, get set.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Sprint segment where we set a 7-day action item, take a baby step to creating a better life and create a better retirement. So today, here's what I want you to do. In the next 7 days, sit down in a quiet place with your favorite beverage, blank sheet of paper, and a nice pen, and write down a list of 5 things you're going to stop doing in 2018. We all have to-do lists. We all have things that we spend money on because we think we need them. And those things tend to pile up like clothes pile up in a closet. So I want to know what the 5 things you're going to stop doing in 2018 to give yourself some more margin in your life and more focus to work on creating the life that you want. I'd love it. If you email me those, I'd love it. Maybe we'll do a show on the stop doing list and what we're all going to stop doing. So that's your action item for the next 7 days. Hey, I'm excited that Retirement Plan Live was such a success. I'll tell you, I'm excited that we're going to get back to answering listener questions, answering your questions, because the show is really about you guys, right? And creating a great life and a great retirement. If you are so inclined, I would ask you to go buy the Kindle version or the Nook version of the book, Rock Retirement. That's my new book. It actually doesn't come out until March, but the digital versions are available today. If you buy that and you leave an honest review and send me a note, I will send you a special pre-release edition autographed at no charge, including shipping. So go pick up Rock Retirement today. Until next week, this is Roger Whitney, the Retirement Answer Man.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.